I'll create 1.5 million sync opportunities for you around this song. I'm gonna also shoot 1.5 million videos for you for this song. You probably look at me like I had 10 heads. That's what we get from TikTok and Reels and Shorts, is like they're all syncs. Some bigger than others. You got halftime at the Super Bowl, you're getting more engagement than if you got whatever network on Wednesday afternoon. Like the engagement's going to be different. Like you're literally getting millions of videos to songs. So that's how we looked at it and try to take advantage of all of them. And sometimes that's us saying, hey, we'd like for this sync opportunity to happen with this person or this particular influencer, or we'd like to push for the creative around these videos to be this or that. When you really think about it, if you have that many syncs and that many videos around songs, those are powerful tools.
Hey there, thanks for tuning into this week's episode of When Life Hands You Lennons. This week, I am joined by Jay Erving III. Jay is the founder and CEO of a company called Human Resources. They're responsible for the growth of Brent Faiyaz and Pink Sweats' careers, among many others. Now, in 2020, Jay sold his company, Human Resources, to Sony Music's The Orchard for a multi-million-dollar deal. He is now an executive, a senior vice president over at Sony Music, helping lead the direction of building artists' careers. And in this conversation, he talks about his story and how he got to where he was. He's worked very closely with Troy Carter, who is Lady Gaga's first manager and helped start her career, and he talks about working with her so closely. He discusses RAYE's Escapism track, which has blown up in 2022 and charted all over the world. And before I let you go and dive into the conversation, I want to remind you to sign up to my newsletter. That is the best way to stay up to date on the latest dance music news and music business news, as well as when new podcast episodes like this are live. And if you're a premium subscriber of the newsletter, you will get access to these podcast episodes 1 week early, and you could join me in live recordings of future sessions. So I'd recommend you sign up to that below. I have also linked all of my socials, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube in the show notes below. Please follow me there. It really helps me out. Send me a message. I'm always open to connecting and chatting there as well. I would also appreciate a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts at. That really helps the show get discovered by new listeners. And lastly, if you or somebody you know would be a good guest for this podcast, there is a link below to a guest request form. Please fill that out. I'm always looking for music professionals in the dance music space. So without further ado, let's dive in to my conversation with Jay Erving III.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you you allowing me the platform to talk about what we're doing. I was a music manager for a very long time. I got into management when I was coming out of college. I had a friend, a guy named Charles Suit, who was over at Universal at the time, and I was kind of talking to him about what I wanted to do, just in general, right? Because I kind of knew more what I didn't want to do versus what I wanted to do. I knew that I didn't want to kind of have a traditional 9-to-5 type job. I always had a love and a passion for music, and he encouraged me to go into management. He felt like management was a way to kind of learn every aspect of the music business, because as a manager, you're dealing with, making a record, getting in a record deal, touring, you deal with the lawyer, the business manager. Sometimes you have to play big brother. Sometimes you have to play therapist. There's all these hats. And he felt like that would be a really good way for me to figure out where in music I want to be. And I stayed there for 20 years. And, between my partner and myself, I was partnered with a guy named Troy Carter, who we partners with for most of my career. And, we were able to represent superstars over the years. And about 5 years ago, we shut down our management company. And, what I quickly learned is, how much credit is currency, right? And just kind of the role that I played in our business. And I didn't, that those opportunities weren't there for me, right? Like I wasn't, they weren't knocking down my door to offer me jobs to run labels or, kind of senior level positions at record companies. So I was forced back into being an entrepreneur. And I kind of looked at the music space, and I started to think a lot about legacy, right? And um, I wanted to figure out where I could be disruptive and kind of and shake things up a bit. And I felt like distribution was that space. The distribution with services, right? Feel like there was a lot of distribution companies that were super transactional and like these volume based businesses where it's kind of a conveyor belt of sorts, right? Where you just have as much
Mhm.
volume kind of coming through as you possibly can. And I felt like if we did it in more of a boutique way and really provided label services for our partners, we could do something that was a little bit different. And I kind of rubbed a couple of pennies together and out of my pocket and started the company and had some decent base hits and ultimately was able to make a deal in 21 with Sony to come in and acquire my business,
Mm.
um, park it at the Orchard, and take what is my first job ever. At Sony, reporting to Rob Stringer, and at the Orchard, reporting to Brad Navin.
So going back, why distribution? Distribution seems like such a simple thing, and I know a lot of the distribution companies. It's you upload your music, you input your metadata, and it's on Spotify, Apple Music, and wherever it needs to go. Why? Where did you see the disruption needed to take place in that space?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's exactly what you just described is what most distributors do. But
Yeah, and that's all.
unfortunately, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's 90,000 songs that are uploaded a day to these streaming platforms. So
Yep.
what our job is, and how we want to work with our partners, is how do we figure out how to give ourselves a shot at one of those songs breaking through and
Mm,
ultimately being in a position to break artists. And that's
mm,
where, marketing and assets and videos and visuals and tools come into play, because it's tough. It's a tough proposition when you have that much music and content being circulated on a daily basis. Like, how do you cut through the noise is the challenge. And
mhm,
that's going to start with amazing artists, amazing songs, but then it's going to move into how do we service this properly? How do we market this? How do we get this in front of people? How do we take advantage of all of these tools that young people have in order to push music out? And then sometimes there's a spark and there's something that's there, and our job is to come in and put gas on it.
mhm.
So we kind of have to meet artists where they want to be met. But I wanted to apply um, a management DNA to a distribution company where we're super hands on, we're shoulder to shoulder with our partners. We what keeps us up at night is how do we break an artist, right? And how do we
Mhm.
continue to build on some of the successes that we've had? But we're not a conveyor belt. We're not a volume based um, distribution company. I want my volume to come in success, not in the amount of artists that we can run through our platform.
Yeah, I love that because distribution, like I said earlier, is very simple, but it doesn't have to be, and it can be more complex. And like you said earlier, there's 90,000. I think it's UMG said is 100,000. Sir Lucian Grange said it's 100,000. So regardless, that's a lot of music every day going up on these streaming platforms. And we
Right.
have to remember that a majority of them are not doing anything with the music because they don't know how to market their music. As a distributor, and now being owned by the Orchard, one of the forefront of distributions. Can you talk a little bit about how you're in a unique position to be a distributor and having access to that data from the streaming provider, service providers, to then apply that data and information to the artists and then help them, you know, explode? Talk a little bit about that and how that information fuels, if it does at all.
It does, right? I think but I don't, but in fairness, I think the benefit of my relationship with the Orchard is not around data, right? Like
Okay.
we're not a data and analytics company. We don't have the
Sure.
benefit of kind of waiting on for when we're signing stuff. We don't have the benefit of waiting on analytics to sign it,
Mm,
because at that point you got every frontline label in the game. who have, deeper pockets, and it becomes something that is competitive. And I think that there's four of those artists on a daily basis that on a quarterly basis that everybody's kind of going after, right? You have every frontline label after it. You have all of the distributors after it, and that's a tough business to be in, because at the end of the day, somebody ultimately is going to overpay for it. So we don't have the benefit of analytics when we're signing stuff. We do have the benefit of even social numbers, and whether it's TikTok or Shorts, or YouTube Shorts, or Instagram, or even streaming and UGI uh, streams on songs. We do have the benefit of those analytics to then go chase something down when we get a spark. I had an interesting conversation with an artist yesterday, and had to be clear about what a spark looks like. Oftentimes, folks will kind of sit around and wait on the spark to happen. I think our job is, and our role is, to go increase the odds of a spark happening, right? By doing things that are really sticky, by leaning into socials, and finding ways and taking what I call taking swings, right? Because the more music you put out, the more content you put out in the marketplace, the more you give yourself a shot at something connecting. So we're not sitting on our hands waiting for a spark. We're trying to go out and create those sparks, and then when the spark happens, and those analytics come back and tell us that we have something, then we are able to pivot and move very quickly into supporting what that spark is, and kind of and figuring out how we can bring it home.
I know you talked about earlier too about putting gas on things and then making things kind of sticky, which is good analogies. So, do you have a recent project that you worked on, or maybe kind of a case study that you can point to where what you were applying worked, and what was it that you did that worked so well?
I think most recently it's an artist named RAYE out of the UK, who has a song called Escapism.
Okay.
And we put out Escapism in November of last year, and we saw a spark, and on TikTok, and we were able to jump in and move it. But it was also an indication of what my back office support also looks like, right? Because we have a single now that has gone platinum in 12 countries, and gold in some others. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without, the Orchard and the boots on the ground, um, outside of the US. Like it's that reach is tough. And it's tough to, when, as before, prior to doing my deal with Sony, it was challenging to chase things that were happening outside of the US, right? Like we had Brent Faiyaz, who was catching heat and outside ex-US, and ultimately, management actually brought in a company called Graduation. That's fantastic. We had this kid Pink Sweats, who was getting traction in Asia, and had trying to track down the right person to speak to, and then once you vet those people, and and try to pull, you're kind of, it's tough, and it takes some time. But what the our new setup showed me with this RAYE scenario is we were able to activate immediately, globally,
Mm,
and
mm,
and really kind of go out and chase it. And we have a song that will do 1.5 billion streams, in the or more in the end, and really
mhm,
set her up to be a real player in the new artist game, right? And in an environment where breaking new artists on that level and globally, and also, we've I started to really kind of think about the fact that we're breaking a global female pop star, independently,
amazing.
and I can't say that I've seen that happen independently previously, which is a good sign of the times, right? And just kind of where we are, and all of the tools that we have in order to have success. Um, and my hope is that there's other, that it continues to happen. Like when you look at what's happening with some of these male acts on the independent side, I would love to see more of that for, for women in music, and and definitely for us, in terms of being able to have, people look at us as a solution for independence with services, but still having the ability to take things all the way.
hmm So I want to go back to a point that you said where you're not a data analytics company, which is valid, but and then you mentioned you get the metrics from like social media and whatnot, and then you're having an artist, for example, that you're looking at and wanting to sign or you've distributed, and then all of the major labels and whatnot are kind of looking at this artist, and you have to make a decision before they do because somebody may have deeper pockets. How, in those moments, are you making the right decisions to make sure that you're not overpaying for an artist?
We got to stand on the business, right? And like, and the deals, and how they make, and what makes sense. I think my sell is, in my pitch, and not pitch, is because it's a promise to my partners, right? Is
Mhm.
is not about having the deepest pockets.
No.
That's not the game that I'm in. And if that's the game that, if folks are looking for the biggest bag, we're probably not the right solution.
Mhm.
But I think, in terms of experience as a manager, what our team represents in terms of, young people of culture, it's that's what we have to lean into, right? And
Mhm.
we just signed one, um, end of last year, that was really competitive, and they had really big financial offers on the table. This kid Kells from New York, and they ultimately they decided to go with us, and kind of take their have their fate lie in their own hands, right? And really take a shot on themselves ultimately, at the end of the day.
Mhm.
And so, we'll start to see some of those, that folks in the independent sector will win, and I think there'll be more of that. But what we have to do is now is put some points on the board and have some wins, and continue to show that this model can work and does work, and make our partners look really smart.
Mhm. So, talk a little bit about when you signed Kells. I know a lot of artists get the bags in their eyes, and they see $500,000 advance in their eyes, and they get they don't know what to do with that kind of money. But you maybe don't have that kind of money, which is fine. But you're able to offer the legacy part. You're able to help that artist become a legacy and leave an imprint. Can you talk about the shift in the mindset? Like, what's more important and why maybe leaving a legacy is more important than getting a big advance?
I just think that there's a world where, like, because the fact of the matter is, we can do any kind of deal that we want to do, right? I think
Sure,
we can meet artists wherever they want to be met. If you want that $500,000 advance, we can figure that out, right? But the
sure.
challenge is what the back end looks like. And for
Mm,
me, is like, as a manager, for over 2 decades, when I was going into building human resources, one of my concerns was, because I have to be very aware and um, respectful of relationships, right? And like, I think that's the only thing that's been able to keep me even in play for 20 plus years, is relationships.
sure.
And I pride myself on doing good business, doing what I say I'm going to do, and if I tell an artist I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, and I'm or break my legs trying, right?
Mhm,
That's just kind of the mentality that I've taken into music. And in success, I want our partners to look at us and say, you know what, we did a really fair deal. Like, I don't want, in success, for our partners to say, "Damn, you screwed us because you gave us, $10, and you took all of every single right that was out there to take from us,
mm,
and now this feels very lopsided, and it's a contentious relationship, and you know I want people to feel good, and I want people to also have some skin in the game, right? Where it's like, we're if we're going the independent route, and we're not kind of spending as much, as some of the frontline labels on marketing and promo and those kinds of things, we're gonna have to work twice as hard, right?
mhm,
Because we're gonna have to make a dollar stretch, and we're gonna have to stretch in terms of our reach and how hard we're working. And that's, those are real partners. When you have partners that are willing to work hard and go the extra mile, for ultimately in the end to be able to maintain some ownership in their art. I think it's important for artists to own their art.
Hmm. I think that is a very important point, because it's like if you take somebody's art away and then you say, "Hey, or now you have to dedicate your entire career trying to build this and make it big," but it's like, I don't own that art anymore. Why would I care about that? So keeping that ownership
There,
in the copyrights or whatever.
there's definitely some, not some, there is for sure benefits for, those types of, because those artists that have broken globally on the frontline label side, the ancillary revenue that's associated with that is massive. And in all
Mhm.
fairness, the frontline labels don't participate in a lot of that revenue,
Yeah.
most times. So if we're talking about pulling it back to just the pure X's and O's of business, when you're investing millions of dollars into a company, you naturally you should have a stake, a significant stake in that business. I think the
Mhm.
challenge is, and what I like to see, and I feel like, Sony in particular has done an amazing job of, revisiting those relationships in success, and I think that's fair. And I think that's fair, but it's for us is like, if we're investing, you know, a couple $100,000 and we're taking this swing together, it's fair for the artist to have a bit more upside and ownership in what it is that they're doing based on what our investment is, right? So I think that
Absolutely.
there's a way to look at both and really justify both, in terms of making sense. But and again, it's like, we've built a model where we can meet artists wherever they want, and managers wherever they want to be met.
Mhm. So when these artists, you mentioned earlier in the episode about an artist kind of taking off in Asia, and can you talk about the platform that they took off and kind of where it started and how you capitalized, how you were able to activate and then capitalize on that movement?
Yeah, it's Tencent. It's they're one of the social media platforms over there, and it just started to connect. And we had to take a second to, and again, this was prior to me doing my deal with Sony. So I just independently, me and the couple of employees that I had at the time were figuring out, how do we navigate that world? How do we navigate influencers on that platform? Who do we need to speak to help us market, promote, and push this artist in this region and market? And we had to go through and do some vetting and find people that were helpful. But it takes a second, like there's,
Mhm.
um, and now, like, you build those relationships over years and know who to kind of go to, and who's good and who's not. But it's through trial and error, and you don't want to be dealing with trial and error, when there's a spark there that you're trying to chase down.
Mhm. Mhm. So, are you seeing um, various social media platforms? Which ones are you seeing? Are you seeing one work better than the others? Because I know YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, and TikTok are really, really in high competition. So, are you seeing one or maybe another platform that artists are particularly taking advantage of? Maybe there's a specific feature. Maybe there's something else. Maybe monetization is better. What are you seeing any movement in platforms that are better than others?
I wouldn't get into the one being better than the other. What I will say is that there is been a paradigm shift, right?
Okay.
And what's coming off of all of these platforms, be it TikTok, Shorts, Reels, is real.
Hmm.
It's breaking records, it's breaking artists. It's real. So for anybody who thought that it was temporary, or the artists that were being broken off of those platforms weren't real artists, and it was kind of like, these trends, and like, you can really break real artists off of these platforms in a very, very real way. So
Do you,
they're all super effective. It's figuring out how to lean into them and how to create content, music that's sticky, that people care about. And the trend for us on RAYE's Escapism record was the lyric in the song, which really is a nod to her as a songwriter, where she captured this moment that people felt really connected to and compelled to tweet about, TikTok about, make reels about, make shorts about. They and the benefit of how I've kind of couched those socials with my team is the if I came to you right now, right, and I was like, hey, when you put out this song, I'm gonna be able to do 1.5 million syncs for you on this song. I'll create 1.5 million sync opportunities for you around this song, and I'm gonna also shoot 1.5 million videos for you for this song, right?
Mm-hmm.
You probably look at me like I had 10 heads. But the
Yeah.
fact of the matter is, that's what we get from TikTok and Reels and Shorts, is like they're all syncs. Some bigger than
Yeah.
others, some
Mm-hmm.
more engagement than others. Just like you would have on TV, right? Like if
Mm-hmm.
you got halftime at the Super Bowl, you're getting more engagement than if you got you know whatever network on a Wednesday afternoon. Like the engagement is
Mm-hmm.
going to be different, right? But there's
Mm-hmm.
still syncs nonetheless. And um and the videos, like you're literally getting millions of videos to songs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we looked at it and try to take advantage of all of them. And sometimes that's us saying, hey, we'd like for this sync opportunity to happen with this person or this particular influencer. We'd like for this video to happen with this person or we'd like to push for the creative around these videos to be this or that. We can do those things, but the fact and try to and push those things forward. But when you really think about it, if you have that many syncs and that many videos around songs, is like those are powerful tools.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not going anywhere. And that's on one platform. Who knows they go over to other platforms and whatnot. So do you have another example? I know Ray has her lyric is what caught on those platforms, but do you have any other examples of artists that have done unique things that maybe stood out that helped them kind of create their spark?
I think it's all about stickiness, right? And the music, we had um one of the early kind of indicators for me on TikTok was with Brent Faiyaz. And
Okay.
we put out a record called Trust that was on his
Mhm.
project. And the record was doing couple hundred streams a month, and and Brent is like always just done this, like very slowly, just gradually putting one foot in front of the other, just getting better and better and better and better and better, and has now built itself
Mhm.
to one of the biggest cultural artists in the game. But as that build was happening, it was a very steady, very steady build, and you're kind of watching it every month. And my daughter actually came to me and she said, um, everybody's posting about Brent Faiyaz on TikTok now. And she's like, I'm mad because they're saying this new artist, Brent Faiyaz, and I've been on Brent for 2 years and I'm this, that, and the third. She was kind of like annoyed about it, right? And I was like,
Mhm.
and she was like, she made a comment. She was like, and they're posting a record that's been out for 2 years. So I'm like, what record? So she was like, Trust. So I start digging and I see where Trust had gone from doing a couple 100,000 streams a month to doing, 750,000 streams a day, right? Where you see this
Wow.
like direct correlation between what was happening on TikTok and and actual streaming revenue. And it cost me $0 and 0 cents to market and promote. And it's one of those things where like the music is sticky. Brent's an amazing singer songwriter. He created these moments that people and he's had several since then. But that moment where it was like, you know people connected to that particular part of the song, which led to discovery around Brent, but more importantly, streaming and streaming revenue around a song that was turned into a hit um, based on that spark.
Did you see, prior to YouTube Shorts and TikTok and all this Instagram Reels, did you see this kind of growth in any of the artists you were working with?
It was different.
It was
It was it was different. There was different areas in which we were having different tools that the toolbox was a little different, if that makes sense, right? Like we had different platforms that we had to try to lean into previously to try to get those sparks, right? And
yeah.
that's evolved over the years. I think the cool thing about where the industry sits now and is that not only has the toolbox changed, but the toolbox has gotten more robust. So the young
Mhm,
people have a lot more tools to use, um, than we did when I was coming in the game. Which is
sure.
exciting because you're gonna have more artists that are cutting through, and more discovery is gonna happen, and more, but it also creates more noise, and you got to figure out those ways in which you can cut through the noise.
Mhm. So you said we've used the word sticky quite a bit. Can you explain, what do you mean by sticky? What makes a song sticky?
Good. It's good, like something that you want to share, something that you want to, like those moments where you pick up the phone and you call your friend and you're like, yo, did you hear the new such and such, or did you see the
Mhm,
new such and such video? Like those, good is what sticky means, right? And having some level of connectivity with young people in the audience. It's
mhm,
it's and you can translate that to any company, any, like, what's this, what does this solve? Like, this solves a feeling for me, or it describes a moment in time. It makes me feel good. It makes me want to dance. It makes that, like, what is the, what we call a oh shit moment in a visual, where it's like, oh, this is dope, and then it's like, oh shit, that was. And that applies to movies, that applies to a Coca-Cola campaign, that applies to seeing a really dope outfit in a window at a shopping mall. Like, what is
mhm,
that thing that makes me say, oh, I want to walk in this store because those pants are dope,
mhm,
right? Like, I want to go see this movie because my friend picked up the phone and called me about it and said that it was really good. Which
mm.
is air for me right now, by the way.
Mm.
I've been hearing it's really good, so I got to figure out how to see it. But it's like, I call my friends about TV shows. We share information. We like, and having that's what that stickiness is. Where it's like people are drawn to it and they want to see more of it. They want to see more from that particular person. Like, oh, I like these jeans. Like, what else do they make? Corduroys? Do they make pants too? Like, do they make
Mm.
shorts? Like, they want to understand a bit more based on something that they saw that they really liked.
So let's. I love that example of going into a store and you want to see more. If you once you see the, I feel like that's a good example of seeing a video on TikTok. The TikTok video that you see, that one video, is that outfit in the window, and going into the store is going into the artist's back end and listening to more of their music. Do they have merch? Are they on tour? What else can they get involved in? What things would you recommend, like maybe two or three things that you would recommend artists have in place, so if and when that song picks up on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, you have these things lined up, so there is kind of a world that your fans or new people can come into and start exploring? Is it a website? Is it more music? What is it?
That's a really good question. I think what I would say is, have as much as you can done, right? Like,
Mm,
based on your resources, based on what you have access to, I would have as much as you possibly can, in your back pocket, right? And
mhm,
even if some of it's out, like that discovery, the cool thing about what's happening on these platforms is there isn't really an expiration date.
mhm.
My friends in the UK call it an expiry date, but
Yeah.
it's there's no cutoff, right? Like, you see song. I don't know if you've seen what's happening with this Miguel record right now, but it's a record that was put out a decade ago. You know,
Mm.
it's top 5 at pop radio today, you know, and based on what's happened off of socials. And there's discovery about around Miguel that's happening right now with young people that he may not have been on their radar for the last 10 years, and they're connecting to a song that he put out a decade ago.
Mhm.
And you know, the world is already there. The music is there. The visuals are there. You know, even with Ray, you know, a lot of her visual world that she created with support from our team, it was there. You know, the videos were dope. Like her, you know, she's personal. Like you know, she's beautiful. She's stylish. She's you know, and she you know, she came to us with the album that you hear that's out right now. She the first time we met played that album, you know. So
Wow.
she made the album, and she had all of these tools herself, and you know where we could help kind of shape the world. And but when people clicked on escapism off of TikTok or one of these social platforms, you go into this Ray world and you're like, oh, she's a superstar. Like this isn't just a song. Like I'm curious. I want to hear more. And then you know you dig deep into the album, and it's like, wow, this is one of the most prolific writers of our time. And you know, it's you start to all of this additional discovery, which makes me care about you beyond um just a song, which is why she's selling merch and why she's selling concert tickets and why you know she's able to support artists like SZA and Kali Uchis on their tours, like because there's back to that word that I've probably used too much in our short time, but stickiness. Like there's a stickiness
Mm.
there. I care. I care. I want to
That's
know what I want to know what I want to know what jeans she's wearing. You know, so I want to know what food she's eating. I want to know what she's into beyond. Like I eat because I care about her and and who she is as an artist.
I think too a lot of people that we are reminded of too with these social media stars is that behind the screen they're just people. They have daily lives, they have food that they eat, they have movies that they watch, they have their favorite shows, favorite music. So when artists can convey the people that they look up to and the movies and shows and podcasts or whatever they're into sharing that stuff, they become more relatable, which to me I become more interested in an artist when I know, like, I as worthless as the information may be, what kind of jeans somebody's wearing. That's actually kind of cool. Like, what kind of jeans are you wearing? I like those, I want to check them out. And it kind of supports this whole ecosystem, which I think is really really cool.
Yeah, it is, and it's fun. It's like it's fun to see the. It's also kind of cool to see the how it can work in very polar opposite ways, right? Like you
Yeah.
have a guy like Frank Ocean who's very, you know, mysterious, right? And you got to
Mhm.
dig deep to know what he's eating or what kind of genes he's got on, right? You got
Sure.
to do a very deep dive.
Sure.
But his one of the best artists, you know, out right now, and there's this mystery around it, right? And but then you have other artists that are kind of like, this is me in all my splendor. I'm letting you in. I'm gonna take you in the bathroom with me, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
take you to go work out. I'm gonna take you to whatever it is that I'm doing on my daily basis
Mhm.
on a daily basis. You're gonna kind of take the ride with me, and that's fun to watch too, right? And I think
Mhm.
that like there's a lot of different ways you can approach it, but I think um I think the young consumers are really smart, and they see through bullshit, right? And I think it's
Absolutely.
like when I see when young people, I think the days of some kind of trickery and kind of tricking young people into liking, like they see through the shit, you know,
Yep.
and they're a lot smarter than sometimes we give them credit for. And I
Yeah.
think so, you know, my advice always to any of our partners and people that I work with is like, be your most authentic self. I'm not a
Mhm.
social media guy, right? But I have some of my
Yep.
closest friends that are, and
Mhm.
that's them. And our approaches are kind of different, but we're all being authentically who we are and not compromising. And that's what I encourage artists to do. Because if the music is great, whether you're, you know, showing everything or showing nothing, we're, at the end of the day, we're going to get back to the music.
I was at the NAMM conference last week, and I attended a panel with Sam DeRosa, Nikki Flores, and then there was a duo called The Orphanage, and there was a couple other guys from an HVS conservatory out here in Los Angeles. And that panel was so good. And Sam DeRosa is an incredible songwriter. She's a Billboard artist to watch. And she was talking about how artists, what RAYE has done with you guys, how record labels should be viewed as the laziest business partner you'll work with. Now, these artists come in there and they're like, we've got an album. Here's my album. I need you to help me do what I need. Here's my vision. Here's what I want. Instead of artists going into these big record label executive tables and they're listening to this stuff and they're like, okay, so now what? They play their album and they're kind of waiting around going, well, now what? Instead, the artist should be telling them, this is my vision. Here's what I want. I need your help doing X, Y, Z. Would you agree with that?
Certainly wouldn't agree with the lazy part. I think that
Yeah.
there's some record companies that are fantastic and amazing partners. And I've learned from my time at Sony and at the Orchard, I've learned a ton, about how the business works. How I've met some phenomenal people that are really smart, very hardworking, care about artists, and it starts from the top, right? It's the folks that I report to, a lot of senior people that I've met around the company are fantastic and work very hard and are very, very passionate about the artist and the projects that they work with. So I would completely disagree with that part. I think it's, and I think the it's tough because I think for her, she might have a very clear vision and she might have her North Star and she might be able to say, hey, this is who I am, right? And
Mhm.
this is exactly what I want. This is exactly what I want it to look like. This is exactly how we need to roll this out. And there's some artists that very much have that, right? And there's others where it's like, look, my superpower is singing, my superpower is performing, you guys' superpower is marketing and rollout and creating tools, and like, let's play to our superpowers, and then how do we kind of figure this thing out together, right? And I think those relationships are oftentimes equally as successful, if not more, when there is some, we have a Troy and I, there's a book that we read, and there's a concept in that with Susie, who's also a co-founder at Venice, around this concept of being anti-fragile, right?
Mm,
And where that what that means is, having strong opinions, but having those opinions be loosely held, right? Where
mm,
you really believe in something, you really feel strongly about something, you really want to get up and stand on the desk about something, but hey, I'm also open to listening to people that are really smart, that all have their 10,000 hours in the music business, that have done this on a very high level a lot of times, and I'm open to feedback, suggestions, direction, and I'm open to coming off of some of my opinions based on really listening to the people around me. I think one of the things that I'm trying to advocate for is young people, young executives, non-traditional executives that have a bit of a different lens than very different lens than me, as like the old guy who is in Calabasas with three kids. It's
mhm.
their lens is fresh and new, and I think that's one of the things that I would want to advocate for as much as I possibly can, is more young, non-traditional hires. Maybe not the person that was able to get in that um, high level music internship program, or didn't have the resources to travel or do certain things. But I think that there's some amazing people in at our company, and and like I said, I've learned so much and respect so much the work that people in and around this company have put in, and what they've been able to accomplish.
Yeah, I love the approach of hiring from, people who maybe did not have traditional opportunities and giving them those opportunities because there is a lot of talent in those people and they deserve the chances that maybe others were afforded. I think that's an incredible thing that you're doing, and I'm seeing more of it, but there's definitely 100% not enough of it. There needs to be way more of it. So I love that part of what you're doing. One
I think
thing that I have.
it's how I want to stay in the game. Sorry, not to cut you off, but
Oh no.
it's how I want
Okay.
to stay in the game, right? Like I think
Yes.
it's the more young people I can advocate for that are, it's their turn, right? Like we've done this for my job now is to be supportive, to try to help elevate young people, young artists, young managers, young executives. Like that's my job, and that's how I'm going to stay close to the game, because those people the qualified people that I help, or in any way, because I can't take credit for the things that these people do, but if there's any way in which I can be helpful, they'll remember that,
Mhm.
and when I need advice on an artist, or I need direction on how young people are looking at a certain thing, or as these people are kind of moving up in the ranks and taking the seats that used to be filled by some of us old guys, like they still rock with us, and they still will do business with me and still feel good about it. So that's important to me, is to help as many young people that I possibly can.
Mhm. Yeah, and then they can take the knowledge they learned from you and then distill it to their friends and make sure that they're getting accurate, information and, able to move correctly in their careers.
Yeah, and it's like I look at even my close friends, a couple of which that are, a couple of years younger than me, and probably a few, not a couple, probably probably more like
Mhm.
5 or 6, but they're some of my closest friends, and I watch my friend Ryan Press, who's become one of the most influential people in music, and my friend Sterling, who was transitioned from an artist to into being an executive, and I watch these guys like coming and surpassing some of the things that I've done, and it's so fun to watch. But it's also, there's nothing that I couldn't ask those guys that they wouldn't do for me,
Mhm.
and vice versa. And I think it's about being as supportive as you possibly can for the people around you, your network. I've got an amazing group of friends that push me and challenge me every single day, and most of it is from them leading by example and just watching the things that they're doing and being motivated by that. Like I'm extremely blessed in that way. So my network has been, um, has really pushed me, to do better. When I watch what Sean G's doing at Live Nation, and Troy and Susie at Venice, and Ryan like that, it's fun to watch those um those folks. And my network is certainly what motivates me on a daily basis.
Absolutely, and, in the music industry, networking is essential. It's all about who you know, and you never know where your next opportunity is gonna come from, so having that solid
Absolutely.
network of people that are doing amazing things that, you can always lean on and ask for help if you're stuck is an amazing thing. So one of my final questions here that I have noted down that you were talking about earlier is there's a lot of tools in the industry. Like we were talking about how social media and breaking an artist is much different than it was, 10, 15 years ago. And you said that there's a lot of tools available. So can you elaborate a little bit more on some of the tools that you're using to help your clients, or maybe some of the tools your clients are using?
I'll age myself a little bit with this one, right?
Okay.
I was in the music business when we didn't have the internet.
Okay.
So it's like, when I think about toolboxes, when I started in music, the internet didn't exist.
Yep.
There was no digital music. There wasn't social platforms. There wasn't, iPhones that you can shoot a high quality video on. There wasn't spatial audio. There wasn't AI. There wasn't, Web 3. There wasn't all of these things that young people have access to now. Um, it's just the toolbox has gotten way bigger, right? We shot videos and went to radio.
Yeah.
and got on the road, and
Mhm.
tried to go city to city to kind of convince every city to rock with us. Like one of the
Yep.
first examples of it that I saw up close was around Lady Gaga, and really a lot of it was
Mhm.
Troy being so forward thinking in terms of um, technology and how to apply technology to music and to breaking artists, but to go and see her do shows um, in early days where I'm like, how the fuck do these people in Milwaukee know every word to every song, and we
Yeah.
haven't been to Milwaukee yet, right? Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's the song's not on the radio yet in Milwaukee. Like, how the fuck do they know all of these lyrics? And like, it was,
Wild.
so again, it's like aging myself. Is like that's the transition that I've been able to see in the last couple decades. Um, through music. So like the toolbox that these kids have, and I don't mean kids in a disrespectful way. I mean young people, like young
Young
artists, young
professionals.
executives, yeah, young
Yep.
professionals. The toolbox that these young professionals have um, is it puts everybody on notice because they have the tools to be able to do it. So you got to bring something to the table. You have to be able to add value. And one of the coolest things that I think that young professionals ask, you know, us these days is like, well, how can you help me? Right? Because that
Mhm.
wasn't a question that we asked when I was coming up. It was like, you're going to give us a record deal? We're lit. I'm okay. We're celebrating. When in
Mhm.
hindsight is like that's just when the work is starting. That's not the finish line. And if we're going to get aligned and have a North Star and be super aligned going into business with one another, I should understand how can you help me? How can we help each other? Like what? So those questions from young people are really dope and it's fun to see because it's like, okay, well, I got this part covered. I'm handling socials, I'm handling digital marketing, I'm handling like where can you plug in and be helpful,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And that is just fun. It's fun to watch that.
That is really fun to watch. And it's crazy to think, some of these kids, iPhones and technology has made things so easy. And I see sometimes these young professionals are doing things that some people that they do things that take sometimes a week to do, and these young professionals have found a way to do it in a day, and they're finding ways to do things higher quality quicker with the tools and resources that they have, which is incredible. They're starting to innovate, which I absolutely love. And I think, technology, we're going to be having the same conversation in 10 years. Those young professionals are going to be like, well, when I was starting, we didn't have this and that and this and that. And it's, the toolbox will continue to expand. So I think it's important that we all stay up to date on these different tools and resources that are becoming available and, you know, embrace them. And how can they, AI is a good example. How can we use AI to help our careers? How can we be more creative with it? I think those things are
Put
very
your put
important.
your seatbelt on with that one.
Yeah, put your seatbelt on with that one. That
Put
one's
your
getting really
seatbelt on
murky
with
very
that.
quickly. But it's an interesting one
That one's
nonetheless.
interesting.
What are your just, while it came up, what are your thoughts on it? Where do you think it's headed?
It's early days. I think it's kind of the wild wild west right now. It's early days. I think I've done a deep dive beyond music and creative, but when you see, I heard a Drake Weekend AI record on the radio 2 days ago. I
Yeah.
saw a new Gucci campaign where the art was created all through AI. um I've leaned into, agent GPT, chat GPT, and kind of what those things, like it's insane the what's coming from that space. Um, but I think for starters is like I'm still educating myself, right?
Mhm.
I think like a lot of people, I'm trying to educate myself as much as I possibly can, get as much knowledge around it as I can, and then I think we can see how we can apply it.
Mhm.
But I'm still in the educational phase, right? If I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think this is a good topic to be anti-fragile on, is maybe having some strong opinions on, but keep an open mind because
By the
tomorrow
way,
could
you're
be
not
very
going to have a
different.
choice.
No,
You're not
you're
gonna
not
have a
going to have a
choice.
choice.
Like, it is what it is. You're not gonna have a choice. So, like, that's why I say put your seatbelt on, because it's going to get interesting. I think in a fun way. But we're
Mhm.
gonna have to figure out how to deal with it and how to maintain artist integrity and those kinds of things. Is like, you know, I felt I was conflicted when I heard that song on the radio the other day, because it's not
Mm.
Drake and it's not The Weeknd, and but
Wow.
it sounds like Drake and The Weeknd, and
Wow.
it's like, where do you draw the line with artistic integrity and making sure that you're protecting artists and protecting the art.
Yeah, I saw a full 1 hour interview between Joe Rogan and the OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, completely generated by AI. Joe Rogan's voice and Sam's was generated by AI, and they were having a conversation about the dangers of AI and what should be implemented to keep it safe. And the whole conversation was generated around AI, and it sounded like Joe and it sounded like Sam. It's just like we are in the space of this voice generation. It's going to be difficult to see who's who and who's what's what. But it's a very interesting space, and I like the buckle up analogy. It's a good point.
Yeah, and that side of it that has the potential to be very dangerous, right?
Yeah,
And I was just really referring to the art side of it, is like, but there's a side of that has the potential to be very, very, very dangerous.
yeah.
And
Hmm.
it is, we just have, we're going to see where it goes. But like I said, to me right now, for me, it's about education.
I really appreciate your time. We're coming up to an hour here. I didn't mean to keep you too long, but I really appreciate your time and all of the stories and information that you shared. It was all very, very, very helpful. I absolutely love what you're doing and admire what you're doing. So keep doing what you're doing. Keep it up. And yeah, so before I let you go, how can the listeners keep up with you, the company, the work that you're doing, and maybe if they have any questions on anything you had mentioned?
Yeah, we're human.re.sources on IG.
Okay.
And it's also our .com, our website. So I think a lot of the inquiries can come through there. I'm on LinkedIn as well. I'm not as active as I need to be on there, but we'll definitely tap in there as well. Um, but yeah, no, I thank you for the time. I thank you for the ability to talk through what we are up to, and it's a our space is a moving target right now, right? So that I
Yeah.
think the more that we can talk about what we're doing and how we're looking at music distribution with services, I'm super grateful for the opportunity to do that. So thank you for spending this hour with me.